Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christi Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hi, welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we radiate leadership with John C. Knabb, who is a motivational teacher, I think is how you explained it. I love the motivational teacher because I think motivational speaking sometimes gets a bad rap. And we're going to be talking about leadership, about growth, about many different things. So welcome, John. I really appreciate you coming.
Hey, thank you, Christi. It's an honor to be here and be on the Radiate Wellness Podcast, or as today you said, radiating leadership.
Yeah, radiating leadership. And so you've done so many things. You've done all of the things. Chiropractic school, been on the board of the board of
the Chiropractic College.
Yep. Thank you, of the Chiropractic College, and also the certification process of that, right?
Yep. The state board exams,
taking the leadership in that, been a banker, many different things, on many different boards of directors, and now you speak about leadership as well. You have got many hats. Let's just say that.
Yes.
Yeah. So today we're talking about leadership, and you were telling me a bit about the Maxwell group and how you've got a background in that. Can you tell me more about that, please?
Yeah. My path to the John Maxwell Team is what is known as. You're right. I went to Chiropractic College, so I always say I'm educated as a chiropractor. I'm trained as a banker because I got into banking kind of by accident and ended up being there for 11 years.
Right.
And then I refined myself as an executive at Cleveland Chiropractic College, a university system, and then moved on to a manufacturing company that had a national reach, and now I think I'm reformed, as an entrepreneur. And one of the common themes I've had in my life, and I go back to when I was in junior high school and in Boy Scouts, and I attended the National Junior Leadership Instructor Camp at Philmont in Cimarron, New Mexico, which was the National Boy Scout campus. So I can kind of go back to that's the first time I started, doing some leadership things. And when I was at University of Nebraska, I was in a fraternity, and before I knew it, I was in leadership positions there. Really, because I was at that time, I was literally just, kind of floating around, not being intentional about anything, not going to classes, but I still ended up in these leadership positions.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And so it's something that has stayed with me, and to the point where I like to infuse, leadership principles and thoughts and ideas, and really help people grow to become better leaders, because we're all leaders in one sense or another.
Right.
And we all have influence. And so John Maxwell Team is somebody that, there's really 5 people in my life that have influenced me through their books and their writings over the years. And I can go back to Napoleon Hill, the first book I ever read.
Oh, really?
Cover to cover was Think and Grow Rich. My dad gave it to me when I started Chiropractic College. And through Nightingale Conant. And now I have a huge library of cassette tapes, which, who has a cassette player anymore? But from Nightingale Conant. But Think and Grow Rich really got me on that course.
Yeah.
And I belong to a group now where I'm actually licensed to teach and coach Think and Grow Rich as well.
Oh, wonderful.
So that's something I just acquired end of last year or beginning of this year as well.
I could really just encourage anybody who's listening to read that book because it is transformational.
It is transformational, but it's one of those where you have to study it. You can't read it, and you really have to apply the principles and the action steps that Napoleon Hill has in there. So Napoleon Hill was a big influence on me. The second book I read cover to cover was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that book has had a major impact on me as well. And so, over time you start teaching some of those principles.
Sure.
But also Anthony Robbins and then Tom Peters, who is a business management guy, is one of my mentors through all his teachings. Right. And Tom, he travels the world, and he is somebody that every presentation he's ever given, his PowerPoint presentations, notes are on his website. And he encourages you to steal it from him and use it. And so and he's a reader and a teacher and a leader out there. So I love his work. And then John Maxwell also came in, in the early 90s for me with his book, the 21 Laws of Leadership. And so those 5 people have been a big influence on my life.
Yeah.
And then as we were transitioning back to Kansas City, my wife and I, getting out of corporate America, trying to figure out what we want to do. Entrepreneurship is something my wife did for a long time before we worked for a corporation. And so we got back into practice with her, and I was still trying to figure out what am I going to do. And Georgia actually stumbled on the John Maxwell Team.
Oh, wonderful.
And it has been in existence since 2011.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so not long,
Not
really.
long, but it's as John Maxwell says, the John Maxwell Team are the legs to his legacy. And so he is, he's 72, still going strong. Just wrote a new book that came out in February called Leader Shift, which is a very powerful book.
Oh, I can imagine.
And so he's the team is speakers, coaches, and trainers. Mm-hmm. And so there are now over 23,000 certified members of the John Maxwell Team, and we are in every country in the world. And so the team, we are licensed. Certified and licensed to use John Maxwell content. And the John Maxwell Company has always been his corporate training division for many years. And we, at the level I'm at with John Maxwell, I'm an executive director. Okay. I have access to the majority of those programs that the John Maxwell Team or John Maxwell Company has as well. And so I really enjoy it because he is such a prolific writer. And, he's written over 100 books. They're in many different languages.
Yeah.
I mentioned the Leader Shift is one he just came out with. He has a notebook called Developing the Leader Within You. And he actually has 2 versions of that. He has the first one that came out probably 20 years ago, and 2 years ago he came out with Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. And so he's really big on personal growth and personal development, which is something that I really like to work with people on to help them become a better version of themselves.
Oh, I love that. So, I've often labored under the mistaken concept. I mean, this was years ago. I think I've shifted since, but that, you're a born leader or you're not. How can we develop leadership skills?
That is the chicken or the egg, right?
Right.
And I think it's kind of comical because all leaders are born.
Mm-hmm. Right. We have to be born.
We have to be born. And so it's a trajectory. And leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. But influence can be difficult for people. I actually read recently that every person, every human being in the United States, if you're the most introverted person, recluse, you're still going to influence over 10,000 people in your lifespan.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
And so, and that hit me, it's like, so how are they doing that? Well, when they're driving their car going to the grocery store.
Right.
And how they drive, and they might be influencing people that way. Or, if they're, living in the mountains, it might be their footprints on a trail that are influencing somebody.
Right.
So everybody has influence. They just don't recognize that.
Right.
And so I think the next step really for a leader is somebody who's, become aware or has a desire and they become aware of some of these things that they want to do in leadership. And so for me, leadership is about courage and capacity. So, a leader is somebody who has courage really to take the first step, to try something new.
Yes.
And then the capacity part comes in is because of that influence. You have to have the capacity to influence people, for the greater good. And that's something where a lot of people have capacity to influence, but it's not necessarily for the greater good. It might be for personal gain or business gain, but not really to grow a community or to transform a country. And that's what resonates with me is, helping people become better versions of themselves and doing that for however I can influence that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Because I can imagine that, we can influence. It's like using your powers for good or evil. And we can influence people, but not for the greater good. I would imagine that burns itself out fairly quickly and it's not sustainable.
We'd like to think that. But you look at some of these leaders that were, in a leadership position for a very long time because of, and maybe it's the hindsight or the experience, and now we can evaluate the experience and recognize that what they were doing was not necessarily for the greater good. And sometimes when you're in the heat of that moment, it's hard to tell. And that plays into awareness and where people are, in terms of their awareness, what's going on with themselves and what's going on around them.
Right, absolutely. And you talked a bit about earlier that the John Maxwell Group, this type of leadership development, you've gone into different countries and transformed
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I have not done it personally.
No, you've not done it personally.
I'm looking forward to the next opportunity, which sounds like it's coming up this year. But the John Maxwell team, John Maxwell has been invited to 3 different countries. He's been invited to many countries, but 3 of them where he's gone in now with his leadership warriors, his John Maxwell team members, up to 300 of them. And I think most recently was Costa Rica last year.
Wow.
And so from the president all the way down to school teachers, and the police department, the city officials, everybody went through an entire week-long leadership training that was led by the John Maxwell team members. And so it's a transformational experience that is something that's not just a one-time thing. It's a truly, a journey that these countries are on, but they recognize they need to make some changes. And I know he's been to Paraguay as well. And there's I know that there's a new country coming up that they're moving into. But when you think about the depth of that work, and that these countries are reaching out to somebody like a John Maxwell to come in and help transform their country. But they're smart enough to know that it's you just can't do it at one level. You've got to really infuse the entire system to create that change. And that is what the John Maxwell team is doing in these countries.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the John Maxwell team, you said, also works with boards of directors, school systems, just different type of organizations to develop leadership.
Yeah, so the toolbox is growing with this team all the time. So we have learning systems based on communication, on growth, on leadership, on put your dreams to the test is one of his books. Everyone Communicates If You Connect is another book, and there's probably 10 different learning systems that I have access to now through that.
Nice.
And also we now have our own behavioral analysis programs. We actually have 6 different, and they're all based on the DISC program. But we have a college and career report, which is great for students and actually anybody who's a career changer to look at, and it tells you how you think. Oh. It tells you what your strengths are. It tells you how you interact under stress. And it also gives you a list of 50 plus careers that your strengths, the way you are, what jobs you might fit well into. But we have that for sales. We have it for sales leadership. We have it for growth. We have it for communication. So all these different tools can help many different people at different levels. For me, I'm involved with some boards nationally. So it's just natural that I like to bring these in. And a speakers bureau that I serve on for a malpractice company has asked me to no longer do the continuing education programs I do, but to only do the leadership programs and to help boards to develop, because they see the need for leadership.
Absolutely.
With that. And I give an example. I spoke to some students in Colorado end of January. And I always kind of begin, because when I was a student at Cleveland here in Kansas City, Cleveland Chiropractic College, I became involved in a group called the World Congress of Chiropractic Students. And we hosted the World Congress that year here in Kansas City at the Embassy Suites down on the plaza.
Oh, wow.
And so it was my second semester or trimester in chiropractic college.
Yeah.
And on the campus during that event, it was also the homecoming weekend for Cleveland where the alumni come back. And,
oh, yeah.
And Dr. Cleveland had a program that still resonates with me that I remember very well.
Yeah.
And he called it the Chiropractic Summit. And he brought leaders of the American Chiropractic Association, so several different national associations.
Right. The
accrediting bodies were involved as well. And there's 5 different groups, and they went through what were the major issues that the profession was dealing with in the day. And things like unity in the profession, things like federally funded research, things like expansion of scope. And the Cleveland Chiropractic College always published and they still publish an alumni newsletter. And they had a newsletter that came out in the winter right after that listed all these things. And I still have a copy of it, and I actually show it to students today. Because many of the things that we were talking about 27 years ago are still issues in the profession today.
Well, I can imagine.
And so I say I'm guilty, because to me that is a failure of leadership. If we are still discussing the same issues that we were discussing 27 years ago, and there's a lot of emotion, and, political charges behind a lot of these things, I believe that is a failure of leadership. Not any one person, but as a profession, we haven't been able to come together to move beyond, some of those things. Right. And so it's important for me that, and that's my motivation, is to get out and teach and work with these people to help anybody who wants to become a leader become a better leader, so that they can create change and transformation. So we're not talking about those same issues 30 years from now.
Yes. Good. Now, do you work with people one-on-one as well?
I do. I do not as much of that because I'm so busy with some of the other things that I do, and I really love the one-on-one coaching interaction with people. Yeah. But it is I have to prioritize things.
Of course.
And so I do have a what I call a leadership power hour that I do every Tuesday afternoon in Johnson County, and that's I've got a nice core of people that have been coming to that since the first of the year, and it's really just a facilitation on leadership. We take a topic and really break it down. We really take a chapter out of one of the books and go deep into it, and it in my nature, I think I kind of end up coaching people through the process a little bit, and sometimes I have to be careful because I can be too blunt sometimes, and sometimes I have to be blunt with myself. But I enjoy that aspect of it, but I just don't have the time to do that as much as I would love to do that.
Right, absolutely. You think you'll be writing any books in the future? No.
And one of my mentors now, I'm other than John Maxwell Team, I'm in a mentoring group where every week we're learning new life lessons, so to speak. And the leader of that has talked about, he's never written a book, and I believe in him that, books become stale pretty quickly. And even John Maxwell, some of the books that he's written, he has written a second version of them because they became stale and they weren't relevant to the time.
Right.
And so, this mentor has talked about, creating online content and creating some courses and programs online that are relevant and can stay relevant and they're not static because you can update them. As things change, as trends change, as transitions happen, as more awareness occurs, you can go deeper. And so that really resonates with me. It's like, I like that idea of creating some digital content that doesn't stay static.
Right.
But will continue to grow, not only for myself, but from the people that I interact with.
Well, I find these trends are kind of cyclical. That, once maybe it's the 100th monkey syndrome where you kind of reach this plateau of consciousness, then the next leap of consciousness can happen, and then we all plug into that for a while. So I can imagine that there's just constant shifts and changes in terms of how we define leaders.
Right.
Right?
Yep. It excuse me. All the transitions we go through in life,
right?
I think are a big factor in who we look to for a leader, and sometimes the leader might be right in front of us, we don't even know it.
We don't recognize it.
We don't recognize it, but that's because of our awareness is on other things that are around us.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times our awareness is influenced by other people, and that's why I really work with a lot of people is, I want them to be at a higher level of awareness than, conforming to the group. You've got to be able to think for yourself. And it's, there's a leader out there for everybody. There's somebody out there. Sometimes it's difficult to find them. And sometimes because of, who you listen to or who you follow, you're seeing leaders who maybe aren't the best leaders that you should be following.
Right, might not be the best leader for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I a lot of times I work with students in the healthcare professions and coach with them. One of the big things I always tend to get involved in is what I call practice management companies. So they're coaches who are really trying to help them grow their business. But in my experience, I've seen students get involved in contracts that are 5+ years in length. And massively expensive, and I believe everybody should have a coach, but I also believe that you need the ability to get out of a coaching relationship when you outgrow that, or when some transition has happened into yourself, and it's time to find somebody new to get you to a different level.
Right.
And so I struggle because I've seen a lot of people being taken advantage of. When they didn't know any different, and then after a year or two, I'm getting a phone call especially when I was at the chiropractic college, help me get out of this relationship, and it sometimes you can't do it because of how the contract is structured and things like that. So I'm a big fan of coaches, but I also believe that I know for a fact you will change your coach over and over again because your life change. You're going through different transitions, different things become more relevant to you, and people can only take you so far. And that's what we call the leadership lid.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so people have, earlier I talked about capacity. People have capacity to influence people, but their capacity is only so high.
Right.
And so once you've hit that capacity, you're not going to be able to go any further. So businesses, their leaders, if their leader of a business is only a 5 on a 10 with their capacity, that business is going to get stuck. And the only way to get unstuck is to remove the leader. Or bring in different leadership to raise that lid, and you can raise it through education and your own things, but sometimes it just requires bigger transformation to happen because we talked earlier about comfort zones and I think a lot of people don't even exist in a comfort zone. They're in a complacency zone, and so they're stuck and they don't even know that they're stuck. Comfort zone, I think, is people. Some learning, I think, actually, because when you're comfortable is when you'll tend to learn and stuff. So I believe that there's some good in comfort zones, but you've got to get out of those zones. And when you have a lid on yourself, you can only go so far, and a coach can only get you so far. Then you have to find another coach that is up here that can get you to that next level. Right,
to each level.
Yeah.
And then you talked about getting out of your comfort zone, and you had a term for it. The terror barrier.
Oh yeah. So to get out of the comfort zone, to get to a learning zone or a zone of focus. You have to overcome fear, and we're bombarded all the time with our senses are picking up all this stuff around us, and we're our conscious mind is really controlling a lot of what we do because it's our thinking mind, and it knows our habits. It controls our habits. It controls our thoughts. And limiting beliefs. We all have them. And so you have to break through those things. And it's I've seen it referred to as the terror barrier because of the fear that is involved that takes to get out of that zone, to get out of that place. But once you do, then you open yourself up to whole new experiences.
Yes, and you just have to get out of it once and see that you're okay. For example, maybe a fear of public speaking, or you're afraid of presenting yourself to a group of people, and then you get past that, and then everything opens up. Right. Yep.
So as it opens up, quickly that becomes your comfort zone.
Yes.
And so you have to be intentional with continuing that growth in that process. But because comfort zone will grow with you, and that's great. We want it to continue to grow.
Absolutely.
Where you're comfortable in a bigger place. And actually, the more that grows, the smaller your complacency zone grows. And that's great because there are times I like to sit on the couch and just veg out for a weekend and be complacent.
Right.
But it's not how I live my life, and I don't think it's how anybody should live their life.
No. But once you get out into that bigger, you take that step past the terror barrier, all of a sudden your comfort zone gets a lot bigger until it's not anymore, and then it's time to move on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Your awareness grows. And we talked earlier about awareness. I talk about awareness a lot, so maybe I can give a little background on how I look at awareness. And I think it was originally Bob Proctor, that's who I've studied some of his work. With the stick man and concept therapy. Concept therapy was actually created by a chiropractor in the 1930s, 1937.
Was it really?
Thurman Fleet. And it's about the mind-body connection, but where the mind is 10 times bigger than the body because of how your subconscious and conscious interact, and how that creates actions that create your results. But Bob, I learned this from Bob. I've seen it in other places, but there's really 7 levels of awareness. And it's, I think, important as you understand those to kind of understand where you are. And there's different parts of your life you'll be in different levels of that awareness. But the bottom, the foundational level is called animal. And it's you're fighting for survival.
Root chakra.
Yeah, and you're reacting to everything instead of responding to things.
Yes.
And it's not a good place to be.
No.
And as human beings, we I like to say we're spiritual beings with an intellect living in a physical body, and so we have the ability to think and use our mind. So, animal is the bottom level of awareness.
Yeah.
The next level is called mass. And that's where we conform to the group.
Right.
We don't know any better, and so we see everybody, going, moving along, and we conform to that group because we don't know any better.
Right.
We're sheep in a flock.
Well, it's also survival in a way because there's safety in a group.
Exactly. And you don't know any different.
No, you don't.
You don't know any different. So the third level is aspiration. And now you start wanting to recognize that there's something different going on out there.
You see the potential.
And you see the potential in yourself.
Yes.
Which is important. So
that's important.
So there's with aspiration, there's desire, but there's no action behind it. But our awareness is growing because now we see things we didn't see before.
Absolutely.
So the next level is called the individual level of awareness, and that's where we really start expressing our own uniqueness, our giftedness, and as we do that, we grow to the next level, which is discipline. And discipline is where we can give ourselves a command and we can follow through on it. And as we do that, then the next level is experience. We start having more experiences where we are learning from those experiences. It's important. We all have experiences, but it's only the evaluated experience that really can have an impact on our lives.
What do we take from it? What is our lesson from it? Yeah.
So once you have more and more of these experiences, now you become a master of your awareness where you respond instead of react.
Yes.
So that's when I love helping people understand where they are. And a lot of times people are in that aspiration zone. They have the desire, but they just don't know what to do or how to get out of that, what actions they need to take.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this sounds so simple because we're just living our day, and it's like, of course we're going to get out of survival, try to get into aspiration, et cetera, but it's really a lot more subtle than that, isn't it?
It is. It's as simple as changing how you think, or changing one word in a sentence you repeat to yourself all the time.
Yes.
And so sometimes those awarenesses people just don't have because they're in their rut.
They're in autopilot. Yes, absolutely. They're in their rut.
And they're on that knowing trajectory of life, and they have aspirations, dreams, hope, but they just don't know how to create that intention and then take the action on that intention to change that trajectory in their life.
Yes. I find that sometimes all it takes is like maybe one in a group who's able to achieve that aspiration, and then it gives the others this scaffolding effect so that they can climb out as well. And I'm thinking specifically of people in poverty, people in desperate situations where completely in survival mode, don't even have the energy to aspire to anything different. But you get one kid in that school or in that community who climbs out of it.
Well, there's so many good examples here in Kansas City.
Right.
And when you were talking about that, it made me, for whatever reason, I thought of Chris Good. And Ruby Jean's Juicery and
He's
and
actually
Kitchen.
coming in to talk with me this afternoon to be on the podcast.
And what a great example for the community of what he's doing there at 30th and Troost.
Oh, that is my happy place.
Yeah, and it's a spectacular place. And just being around him, his energy, he is going to elevate that community.
Oh, I'm so excited.
And it's one person who's doing that.
Now, just to interject here, Chris Good is the owner of Ruby Jean's Juicery and Eatery. My happy place. That is my favorite place to eat. I have loved it ever since the first time I went. So it's in what a lot of people here in Kansas City would consider a bad part of town, or a rough part of town. There's a lot of people who won't even go over to Troost. Right. But he's bringing new life. He's to the community. He's just a dynamo. He's bringing health and healthy foods to this part of the town that they didn't previously have anything like that.
Well, you think about the experience we've had with Chris and us talking about it now, how that's radiating out.
Absolutely.
And going to help that community. So he's just one example. I've seen students when I was working at the Chiropractic College who one student can influence the entire student body.
Oh, absolutely.
And we all know the story about the crabs. You don't want to be a crab because when you're in a bucket with crabs and you try to get out, what happens?
Right.
All the other crabs pull you back in.
Right. When you go crabbing, you need a bucket and a big rock and a piece of wood. Yeah. And then, you go get one crab and put the wood on top and put the stone on top. And then when you get two crabs, you don't need that because they try to pull each other out.
They try to keep each other in.
Yeah, pull each other down.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's all based on your awareness,
right?
And what you're wanting to do. And I just want to help people, become the best they can be.
Yes. Oh, that is a really noble goal. Yeah. Hi, this is Christi. I just want to say that we here at Radiate Wellness hope you're enjoying this podcast. It's free to you, and we hope that you find it informative and inspirational. Heck, even fun. We have just 3 small asks of you to help us radiate growth. First, please hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. That way, you'll receive a notification every time that we have a new podcast episode out. Next, please give us a thumbs up, a like, or a 5-star review. If you're feeling inspired, a positive review wouldn't hurt. These 2 small things will help others find us when they're searching for great podcasts. Finally, please tell your friends about the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Better yet,
show them how to find us and how to subscribe. If everyone did that, we would double our audience. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
So say that somebody wants to has these aspirations. Somebody wants to rise to the next level. What is some advice you might give them?
Well, the first thing is, who do you hang out with?
Oh, that's a good question.
And it's, we are, the 5 people we hang out with most.
Right.
And so if there are people that are crabs in the bottom of that bucket and you're trying to get out,
right.
you need to go find new friends. Mm-hmm. You need to go get around new people, new experiences, and grow your awareness, but also, experience what other things are to be experienced that are out there. So, even though it can be fearful and daunting to go, try something new, like we talked about earlier, that gets you, once you break through that zone, you can never go back.
No, you really can't.
You can never go back. So look at who you hang out with and who's mentoring you. And one of the, I talked about it earlier, the best places for me where I got mentorship growing up, and I was, grew up in a small town in Nebraska, and I've now traveled the U.S. extensively, and speaking on universities and all that kind of stuff. It just I look back, it's like never thought I would be there, but it was the books I read too. So a lot of my mentors came in the form of books.
Absolutely.
And tapes.
Yes.
And so read those books, and I'm the kind of person that my wife and I, we have a library of well over 3,000 books.
And now I should say your wife is Dr. Georgia Knabb, who's also been a guest on this podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. She started as a chiropractor, but then what did she call it? Functional medicine?
Functional medicine is her focus now. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So and you manage her practice.
Yeah. So Georgia and I. We have over 3,000 books in our library, and we actually manage it with an app. We have found a free app, so you can actually scan the UPC code in, and it's just awesome.
I love that.
So we use it. So I go to Half Price Books all the time, and I'm always looking for books that I love, because I love to give away books, especially when I speak to students and on universities. I always try to have several books with me that I can give to people who are engaging and interactive with me, because those books changed my life.
Oh, absolutely.
And changed the trajectory that I was on. So get around the right people. Read good books, and not just read them, but my books are. I study them, and you underline them, you write about them, you apply what you're learning to your life, and that's what I love about John Maxwell books, because every chapter is just full of relevant content that if you really take the time to understand it and apply it, it's transformational. And then DVDs or books or podcasts like this podcast, this is where you need to be spending your time, not watching TV, and George and I, we probably watch an hour and a half of TV a week on a Sunday morning, and many times we turn it on. A lot of times we just look at each other like, why are we even doing this? Because what they're talking about is either politically charged, or it's a pharmaceutical company, promising a better future through their pill,
right?
And it's the same stuff over and over and over again, and it just when you're at a different level of awareness and you start recognizing that you're being bombarded by that all the time, you need to change it, and so we do a lot of reading and listen to music, and we got a 7-year-old, so he keeps us on our toes all the time.
Yeah, he's a sweetie.
Yeah,
good boy. Yeah. So speaking of books, what are your top 5? What can you recommend?
Well, my all-time favorite book is Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, and
Talk about being rich.
I'm really excited to start being able to teach some of that as well, because it is transformational.
It is so rich in information.
Yeah.
I mean, there's good information every paragraph.
Every paragraph, and I would encourage you got to get the original version, the 1937 version.
I agree.
Because the newer versions, I had a version from 1960s, and the editors took out some of the content, and because it wasn't, they didn't believe it was relevant to the day, and when they're talking about. Wallace Simpson and the King and all that. So there's a lot of things in there that were taken out, but I think it's, I prefer to hear it from Napoleon Hill and his perspective at that time and understand. So get the original version of that, and you can find that. My second book would be The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Right.
That book is, the 7 habits are something that just resonate with me in everything that I do, and I can easily talk about them to people. So, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, think win-win, seek first to understand, synergize and sharpen the saw. They're all just, I think, important things in how we can live our life and be effective. So,
now, did you know that there are schools based on that?
I do.
Yes, Brookside Charter School.
So is that the Leader in Me program?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so that's something I've looked at, trying to get a license to be a teach as well, because I just, the Stephen Covey work, and I was so disappointed when he passed away several years ago.
Yes.
It was a bicycle accident in Utah.
Oh, that's too
that
bad.
resulted, but his influence on me, and I've seen him live, and I got to be honest, I'd rather read a book than go see him live. He got better on, but he was kind of a monotone speaker.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
And just didn't really engage the crowd, but his message was so powerful, and it was simple. And that's, I think one thing about being a leader is you have to do the hard work to keep your message simple. Because if you can't do that, you're not going to you don't have that capacity to influence people for the greater good. So those are my top 2 books. My third book would probably be The 21 Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. Now that was a book that really got me thinking more. Think and Grow Rich was really a mindset book, still is. The 7 Habits was more about the personal growth in myself, and then the 21 Laws was really about leadership and taking my leadership abilities to the next level. Then now we get there's so many of them out there. Anthony Robbins had a big impact on me. I talked about a little bit about him, his book Unlimited Power.
Wonderful.
And the limiting beliefs, and I actually got to experience him this
You did.
last summer in Chicago, his Unleashing the Power Within. It was a 4-day immersion.
Oh my goodness.
And Tony is just he's powerful on stage. There's 9,000 people, in the place, and it's like, how's this going to be? Well, it was impactful. It didn't matter where you were. I mean, he was on the stage 2 of those 4 days, but he was on stage for the first day, I think, for 15 hours.
And he is magnetic to look at and listen to.
He just has something about him. And his programs aren't for everybody.
Right.
And his life programs, and I didn't know this about him till I saw the Netflix documentary on him about I'm Not Your Guru. But he cusses quite a bit in life programs.
God love
so
it.
it's kind of startling a little bit to
Sure.
people because in his tapes and stuff you don't see any of that.
Right.
But that's what he believes is a trigger to help you create the change in your life that you're trying to create.
Right.
His belief. So Unlimited Power was a very powerful book back then, and all the programs that came through with that. So that is my 4th book.
4th, yes.
So my 5th book. That's a good question.
There are
You're challenging me.
so many.
Yeah,
Good.
I have a huge library. Like I said, I got 3,000 books that are in there. There's one by Rick Horwath, Horwath.
Never heard of him.
And he's a strategy guy.
Oh, great.
And so he has and I'm going to get the title wrong, but it's like the strategic, or being strategic, but it's really focused on you and helping you to be a little bit, take who you are, but to think bigger and be a little bit more strategic, which is more intentional in the path that you're going with things.
It is.
Now my conscious is telling me, my subconscious is like, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. That's another treasure from, that book was written, I believe, in the 30s as well. And it's a simple, short read. But you need to digest every single word of that book when it comes to your mindset. And speaking of mindset, Carol Dwork with her book Mindset is a fascinating book on positive mindset and how to create mindset.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to start rambling about books. So
Okay. I feel like I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Dr. Michelle Robbins'
Yes.
Big Shift, Small Changes, Big Shifts Foundation and the organization. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we're so blessed in this community. We have so many great people who are trying to change community for the better.
Right.
And who have that capacity. We talked about Chris Good earlier, and Dr. Michelle Robbins is definitely one of those people.
Oh, yes.
In this community who is a true connector, but has a vision that is just tremendous. It's huge, and that vision is really about creating generational change through whole person health. And it was fascinating because just this week, the Blue Valley School District sends out a thing, and we got it in the mail, and they have an article in there called 0 Reasons Why, and it's about teen suicide. and what's going on. And in Johnson County, in the 2017-18 school year, they had an increased number of suicide attempts, and they actually had 15 teens who committed suicide.
Oh my!
And it sounds horrible, but then the next line says, this is on par with the national average. And there's a mental health crisis going on,
of course,
in here. And Michelle was impacted by this in her practice a couple of years ago, where she had 4 people commit suicide, for her patients, over the course of 13 months, all different ages. And she's like, we've got to get, her message is so powerful. We've got to get it out to the masses. So I'm honored to help her. She has 2 different organizations, different from her Your Wellness Connection, which is her actual chiropractic business.
Right. Dr. Michelle Robin is a powerhouse here in the Kansas City area, and she's got this practice on the west side of town called Your Wellness Connection. Therapists, chiropractors, acupuncture, massage therapy, like all kinds of different things. But she created this wellness consortium to unite wellness practitioners here in the Kansas City area. Now, we have listeners all over the world, so I'm hoping that wherever you are...
We're coming to your community soon.
We're coming to you.
That's right. So Michelle's created the Big Shifts Foundation, and the foundation is a not-for-profit that now has a full board, and they're focused on educating kids and their families. So that they can understand, what well-being really is, and it's all based on what Michelle's created called the quadrants of well-being.
Yes.
And so it's the quadrants is something that goes back to I think Chinese
ancient.
medicine. Ancient.
Oh yes, it's ancient.
And Dr. Richard Yenny brought it to the States, and that's where Dr. Robin learned that. And so there's a mechanical quadrant, there's a chemical quadrant, there's an energy quadrant, and a psychospiritual quadrant.
Right.
And so
these 4 aspects come together to create whole health and whole wellness. Yes.
Yeah. And I prefer to say, we call it whole person.
Whole person.
And I'm saying whole person well-being.
Yes.
Instead of wellness, because I think wellness is overused. People don't understand what they think it's prevention.
Right.
And that's okay in some circles, but that's not what we're about. We're about well-being. And I think there's I talk about this a lot. There's a shift going on where wellness was an HR initiative in a lot of businesses, and now the shift is occurring to well-being as a workforce strategy. Going after the whole person. So the foundation is about education, and then Michelle's also created the Small Changes, Big Shifts, and I like to call it network, but we're trying to build community.
Yes.
And that's what the wellness consortiums are doing here locally right now, of like-minded people who want to have this common language of well-being, of whole person health care for people. So when you go into a massage therapist or a chiropractor or your dentist or whoever you're seeing, or even a restaurant, that there's some common language about well-being, and we're starting to see that message take hold. So I'm just honored to be working with her and really help take this vision and really, we have a saying, and you've heard it before. It's an old African proverb, and it's if you want to go fast, go alone.
Right.
But if you want to go far, you have to go together.
Yes.
And so we're trying to figure out how to do this together, because we know the ripple effects, the butterfly effect of every seed that we're planting in the community with people will have an impact on millions of lives in the future. And so we want to be intentional with how we do that, but we also want to do it in a way that honors the vision that Dr. Michelle has for this, and that is transforming the next generation of kids. And I've heard her talk about this many times, and a simple way to understand this is, particularly people who do have kids, will get this. And if you're having health issues and you aren't sure what's happening, but it's hard to make change. I've heard Michelle say it many times, is you're not doing this for yourself. You're doing this, for your 10-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you frame it in that perspective, it really hits. And I've got a 7-year-old son now, so it hits.
It hits you
hard. It hits in the heart.
Yes.
And it really gets you understanding that I do need to make some of these changes for this next generation.
And not only to preserve your own health and wellness, so that he
but
doesn't
my
have
family's.
But to influence him as well.
Exactly.
Right.
It'll influence him, and it will influence his kids, and continue
absolutely.
on. And the research Michelle's done, we believe it's 2.5 generations to really create that change. Really?
2.5 generations?
Yep.
Okay.
So we got a lot of work in front of us.
The stakes are big.
The stakes are big. We have a lot of, we call them wellness champions, and these are people who attend the Wellness Consortium on a regular basis.
Right.
But they're giving us a few more hours a month to really learn the quadrants and apply them in their businesses.
And again, the quadrants are mechanical,
chemical, energy, psychospiritual.
I would love it when doctors, Western medical doctors, I should say, got to the point where they'd say, okay, well, here's what's going on with your body. What is your spiritual practice?
Yes.
Here are some ideas if you don't have a spiritual practice. What kind of supplements are you taking into your body? I would love to get to that point where doctors are having that conversation.
Yep, so we're trying to change that language.
Wonderful.
And one of the avenues we believe to really do that, not only through the wellness consortiums, but it's through corporate America.
Absolutely.
With all these corporate wellness programs or well-being programs, as I like to call them.
Yes.
And so we are actually creating basically a health risk assessment on all 4 quadrants.
Love it.
And so we can go in and work with a body of employees and run them through a bunch of tests, and then we can give you a score that each individual would get their mechanical score, their chemical score, their energy score, and their psychospiritual score. And then the company would know overall where they had gaps and where they are succeeding in the program. Most of them succeed in that mechanical, because it's a physical program typically.
Absolutely.
When they talk wellness. So we want to give them, a baseline, and then a year later when they go through our programs, we can then do that assessment again and then give them a whole new score. And the goal is to move the dial so that they're improving year over year.
Yes.
And I've seen that happen in the manufacturing company I worked for. We had 380 employees, and every year our scores grew, but it was a fabulous culture, so I know this can work in corporate America.
Oh, absolutely. The VA actually is implementing a new program, much similar to that. I'd say new. It's maybe about 5 years on the East Coast. It's been in St. Louis for about 2 years, and it's new here in Kansas City. They're building the program. It's called Whole Health, and the VA is adding acupuncture and meditation and Tai Chi and spirituality and all these different aspects to contribute to the whole health of the vets.
Yep. So that was I believe Tracy Gaudette started that program for the VA, and she was the director of cultural transformation. And one of my mentors and somebody I got to work with for many years was a retired brigadier general, Becky Halstead. And Becky is another real true mentor in leadership for me in the last probably 7 or 8 years. And she was the second class of women who graduated from West Point. And she was the first woman to command troops in war for the United States.
Oh, my gosh.
Over in Iraq. And she's written a book called The First Person You Must Lead Is You. But in the company I worked for, we had a military program. And so through Becky Halstead and Dr. Carol Melizia and some others, we were getting involved in the VAs, particularly in the state of Washington and in Texas and in Florida. That's where the big VA centers are. And they were open to this message of whole person care.
Wonderful.
And whole food nutrition and things like that. And it was somebody like Becky who was really helping lead that charge, because she had the influence and to open those doors up, because they knew they needed a different conversation. And so for them to bring in these holistic modalities into the VA, I think is a huge step.
That is a huge step.
In the right direction for our country.
Because it's such a large organization and has so much reach, and everybody knows a vet. Right?
Absolutely.
And this is going to just blossom, is my hope.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know that the federal level, and if you're interested in things like that, I know there are many laws out there that are introduced and just need more support. And so, it's one thing I would encourage people to get involved politically is, things like that to help fund these type of programs. Because a lot of these programs get passed, through Congress and get signed into law, but they're never funded.
Absolutely.
And so let's not get them passed, but let's really make sure that we can get these things funded as well.
Yeah, right. So we're not hamstringing it from the beginning,
right,
from the outset. With the debate over national health care, I think this is also very important, not to be lobbying only for maybe single payer or Medicare for all, not to be lobbying only for that so that it's more equitable for everybody, but to be lobbying that it's a more complete system.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yep. So, there's a lot of choices people have out there, and that's one area that resonates with me with the veteran community. There's a lot of services they have through TRICARE, but TRICARE doesn't pay for a lot of the holistic services. Now, like you said, the VA is opening some of that up, but they're only in a few like you mentioned, a couple of them. There's only in a handful of the 260 Department of Defense healthcare facilities that are out there or whatever. So we need these programs to get funded so they can expand rapidly.
Right, and they need to succeed where they are and show results, and
exactly.
then it can expand like that. So you mentioned small changes, big shifts, and just to kind of recap, the book that Michelle Robin wrote was Small Changes, Big Shifts, just that we take small changes in our life, just change one thing. I believe she says one thing a month.
Correct, yeah.
And then in a year, we're completely a different person.
Right.
Absolutely. So we've had a lot of guests on this show talking about very small changes, whether you just like changed everything to organic, that would be a small change. That you try to get an hour of sleep more a week is a small change. So whatever the small change is, it adds up, and that's what this foundation is trying to promote as well.
Right. Yep. It's the simple things. It's the things people don't even think about. But one thing that resonates with me is when I was a banker, I drank a minimum of a 6-pack of Pepsi a day.
Oh.
Every Monday I would walk in with my 2 cases of. I didn't know any different.
Right. You didn't know.
Even though I was out of chiropractic college and stuff, that it just. Yeah. And then many years down the road, all of a sudden it would hit me, when some health issues were happening or whatever. So it's just drinking water, and we talk a lot about kids with acne, and they go get their prescriptions, but all they drink is soda, and if they would just to start drink water, their body would take that differently and help. So sometimes it's just as simple as drinking an extra glass of water a day, or a single glass of water a day.
Or a single. Well, and you don't really have to go out of your way to do that. If you're already going to a vending machine, just choose the bottled water. Not the best for the environment, but we're talking small changes here.
Right, exactly.
Right? If you're already going to McDonald's, no judgment, but you're already going there, so get a salad instead of, so you're already doing these things, just make better choices.
Exactly.
Small shifts, and we've talked about that many times on the show.
Yep. So I talk to people about you got to become aware of those small changes you want to make. So you're going to go through McDonald's drive-through. You probably end up with the Whopper or whatever it is, and then as you're biting into it, you're going to think, oh, I should have done something different.
Right.
Now you're aware, and so you've got to create a little bit of pain.
Right.
With that, so that next time your awareness speaks to you, speaks to you before
the
you place that
drive-through.
order. But it's that small change, and then it will just keep growing.
Absolutely.
And so when you catch yourself doing something like that, don't beat yourself up.
Right.
And just instead of saying oh, I'm so stupid I did that.
Right.
Because now you're programming yourself that you're and we don't want to do that. So just say what, I was not resourced at the time to make the right decision, but now I'm aware. Next time I'm going to go through, I'm going to make a better decision. Something as simple as that.
Right.
To reframe it and reprogram it for yourself.
You make one of those changes a month, and then pretty soon you're seeing big shifts.
Yep. And again, it goes to that influence thing. Who's watching you? Who's seeing you do that? Are there kids in the car? Are there friends that you're with when you're going out for lunch? And so it is a small change, but you're planting seeds with yourself and the people around you when you do that.
Oh, I love that. Oh, kids have big eyes. We talk about them having big ears too.
Oh, yes.
Yes. They have big eyes. They see what mom and dad is doing, and you do influence your friends as well. Right?
Yes.
That's why I love places like Ruby Jean's, because if I'm going to be out and about and grabbing lunch on the go anyway, might as well make it healthy.
Yeah, right.
Right? So, and we all have things that we can do to create those small changes. Before we go here, I would just like to know, is there anything you feel like we haven't covered? Anything that you think is important for everybody to know?
Oh, there's so much out there.
I know there's so much out there, right?
But I would encourage everybody to be intentional with themselves when it comes to the journeys that you're on. Yeah. And some people say they're not involved in leadership. I believe everything you do. Everything we do rises and falls on leadership, whether that's at the business level, at your personal level, with your family.
Your block.
Yeah, your block. Everything you do, the leadership is infiltrated in that because you're influencing somebody.
Yeah.
You may not see them at that moment, but you have influence. So recognize that and just become aware of the things that you are doing, the people that you're around, and we're here. I think everybody, we want to grow. We want to become better versions. We want our communities to become, a better place to live and grow. And so you have to be intentional. The only way we can create change is to be intentional. So, and it's not thinking about it. It's actually taking that action to get it done.
Right. Wonderful. Super. Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. So I'd love to have you on again if you'd be okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. I can talk a lot.
We can talk a lot.
Yeah. So I appreciate the opportunity to to radiate leadership and maybe provide a different level of awareness for people in their lives and understand that we all are making changes or we're all making impact.
Absolutely.
And I want it to be significant transformation that we're all about.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.